Welcome back to the second edition of the Transfer Portal Tracker for the Kansas State Wildcats men's basketball team as we discuss a new prospect with some K-State ties. In today's video, I'll discuss the player and more. Quick thank you again for helping us hit 3,000 subs. It's incredible. I don't know what's going to happen at 4,000 subs. I'll probably think of something. I've done a couple giveaways and now getting a tattoo here soon. So there's a lot of different things I could come up with. If you have any suggestions, let me know for 4,000. That's a long way to cross. But be sure and hit the subscribe button because we're going to have a ton of K-State content throughout this transfer portal cycle, and I'm excited to talk about that with you. But let me jump right in here and talk about the player that a couple of people have been talking about on social media, someone with direct K-State ties, and I do want to preface this by saying this. When I say K-State ties, it's not to say that K-State's reached out to this kid. It's not to say that K-State's already got him in for a visit or something like that. Some cases will be, some cases won't be. This is just a general tie to Kansas State that would make you think, okay, there would at least be some interest from either party here. In that case, the player we're talking about today is a 6'3" guard from Valparaiso. That is All Wright. Yes, his name is All Wright. I'm not kidding about that. Son of Joe Wright, former Kansas State basketball player in 1984 to 1986. Also played for Will Spradling's AAU team for a while. Played 3 seasons in Joplin, Missouri at Joplin High School before transferring to Link Academy, where he averaged 15 points and 7 assists per game in his senior season. Those are some big numbers. This past season at Valparaiso, he was the MVC Rookie of the Year, so to put that in perspective, Freshman of the Year, any other name for that award in the Missouri Valley Conference. So he had some big numbers to say the least. Let me toss up some highlights and I'll give you some information on his background, some points, some stats, some everything I can. Talking about All Wright. And no, for those of you wondering, his full name isn't All Wright. It sounds like those are double middle names. His full name, because I'm sure that people are curious, is Andre All Wright Vargas. So technically Andre Vargas goes by All Wright, and you gotta love that. His older brother, Always Wright. No, this isn't a nursery rhyme. No, I'm not kidding. This is real life. Joe Wright named his kids All and Always, and they're both kind of buckets, man. They're both ballers, as you're seeing on screen. Talking about All Wright at Valparaiso, he's a talented player, man. He really is. Averaged 15.2 points per game, 2.4 assists per game, and 2.2 rebounds this past season at Valparaiso. A stat that I know everybody's going to want to hear about. He's a low turnover guy. Averaged 1.4 turnovers per game, and is a relatively high usage guy for the amount of stuff that he was able to do at Valparaiso. Like, he handled the ball a lot, played a lot of minutes as a freshman, had a lot of times where he could have turned the basketball over. He was calm, under pace, did the right things. I understand that that's also not including the difference in competition. I know that's not always just a 1-to-1 ratio jumping from a conference like the Missouri Valley Conference to the Big 12, but it's still something to see there and something to mention for sure. Now, in this video, the highlight videos, you'll see a couple different things that stand out. The dude was in the 100th percentile of all college basketball players in terms of catch and shoot efficiency. He's also in the 85th percentile of pick and roll handlers. I guess that's the best way to say that. It's a little clunky, but the dude operating in a pick and roll, trying to make the decisions. Conveniently, the dude he was most of the time operating with was Cooper Schwieger, someone we talked about in the previous video. If you missed that video, I'll link it somewhere here if I remember. Check it out. Awesome video. Really think he's a talented player as well. Now, in his last 16 games, because this is something even more to talk about, it felt like the light clicked on it. And when you're averaging 15 points per game, is it fair to say that the light came on later in the season when in reality you've been balling all season? Probably not. But just to put this in perspective, over his last 16 games, the kid averaged 20.8 points per game, 2.5 assists per game, and 2.2 rebounds per game. He shot 44.1% from the field, 37.3% from three. And I know what you're thinking. What's the attempt looking like? How many times is he shooting that? That's on 7.2 attempts per game. So the kid's shooting roughly 7 threes per game, shooting 37% on that. That's pretty dang good in his last 16. In the conference tournament in the MVC, the dude had put up 75 points in 3 games, averaging 25 points per game, earned all tournament team honors. He's hitting the portal and considering a return to Valparaiso, but looking out, see what else is out there before he makes his decision. Now, to put this in perspective for you guys, I think there's fair elements of question things here because I talked a little bit about this with Cooper Schwieger and what the process looks like. I have no clue what's going to happen with the backcourt. Realistically, I have no clue what the starting lineup's going to look like next year, and I'm not trying to even give you the idea that I do. I hope I've done a good enough job of saying I have no clue what's going to happen. Realistically, everyone on this team could leave, or they could get 5 dudes back and they could really lean into the continuity thing. I want to talk about the idea of continuity in the backcourt because it sounded like from a recent video on 3Mall, you can go check it out, as one of the podcast episodes with Derek Young and John Kurtz. DY kind of mentioned, hey, group doesn't fully expect to have Max Jones back. They don't expect the waiver to go through. I think that's kind of the safe bet to look at it. So in theory, you probably need to add 4 starters from the transfer portal this season. I also think it's safe to question, like, with this, is it smart to retain some of these guys if you've seen what the product looks like? Let me put that in perspective here. When you think about Doug McDaniel, Brendan Hawson, and Max Jones, you've seen them start in trio all, 32 games this season, 30 games this season. And at times there were some good moments, at times there were some bad moments. I think it's safe to say that continuity is a great thing. Nobody's disputing that. But there's an extent of, like, if you return Brendan Hawson, Max Jones, obviously I'm advocating for both to come back. I just don't know what the roles will look like next season, what the roster would look like. In reality, if you add those 3 dudes back and they're promised the exact same role as, okay, Doug, you're starting at the point, Brendan, you're at the 2, Max, you're at the 3, are the 2 dudes you add in the front court going to be so much better than David Gasson and Coleman Hawkins that it's going to comfortably put you in the NCAA tournament field? I have to tell you the truth, I don't think so. Those are 2 really good players in the front court, and the team just didn't mesh. Maybe you find guys that are better fits, and it works out, but I think it's probably safe to say that continuity only works so far. You need talent. You need different dudes that work well together. There's some talent on this team, but I just don't think it's safe to say that, okay, if you return 6 dudes, 7 dudes, this team's going to be all sunshines and rainbows. That being said, let me jump back into this. In terms of All Wright, I think it's fair to say I don't really see him as a starter as of right now. That being said, you have to appreciate the fact that the kid's putting up damn near 20 points a night as a primary ball handler in college basketball. That's already something right there. You've seen proven production, and you can't really ignore that. The thing I will say is this. He could eventually be a starter. He could blow me away once he gets on campus. He could blow everybody away and be much better than everybody thinks. Nobody's looking at him saying he's a bad player. It's just the idea of, is he going to be ready to take that large of a role? And I don't think he is. And that's fair to say. I feel like that's an okay thing to say. I feel like All Wright can be a great player. You can't look past it. As a freshman, you're averaging 20 a game over the bulk of the year, realistically. I'd probably say that he'd be more suited in a C.J. Jones type role for Kansas State, and I don't quite know what that looks like in terms of, okay, we have 4 vacancies in the starting lineup. Is this guy going to be a guy that cracks that rotation? Is he going to be in the rotation as a whole? Is he going to be what's the ceiling like for All Wright? What's the floor like for All Wright? I think right now, like I've said in previous videos, the mission for Kansas State basketball should be to surround Doug McDaniel. If he's back, caveat to all this, no one knows who's going to be back. In theory, I think Brennan's locked in. I think Doug's locked in. I think a couple guys are. But you could also see everybody hit the portal, and it wouldn't be the craziest thing to see. In terms of All Wright, I think he's a good player. I think he's going to be a great player one day. It's just the fact of his floor right now is low enough to the point that I don't think it compliments Doug McDaniel in that sense. You need to surround Doug McDaniel, who genuinely, in fairness, is a really polarizing player in terms of he's going to have high highs, he's going to have really low lows. You need guys around that aren't going to have these drastic lows. You need high floor type dudes. Even if the ceiling's not as massive as you'd think it is, it's still up there to say, okay, even on a bad night, he's going to give you production. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. Doug McDaniel needs to be surrounded with those guys. All right now, because of the jump in conference play, I don't see that he has that high of a floor. I think it's more so once he gets up to speed, he could impact the roster. He could impact, the starting rotation at least. I don't know what that looks like going forward. That being said, there's a realistic question to ask this, and I think this is a fair thing to say. Is it smart to add 2 dudes from a 15-19 Valparaiso team? I don't know. To tell you the truth, I wouldn't assume so, but I do think it's fair to say that the portal strategy the last 2 years has not worked. You've had some guys you've hit on that have really blown me away. Like Max was awesome. I think Max was a great addition coming from a lower level and really got up to speed, was really, really good. No one's saying that can't happen with All Wright. No one's saying that can't happen with anybody in the transfer portal, but the way you've gone about the transfer portal the last couple of years just hasn't worked, and that's the way I look at this. So I'm not sitting here to say don't add All Wright. I'm not also advocating to say put this kid in the starting lineup. There's some dudes I feel better about than others. All Wright doesn't necessarily give me a plus or minus. I think he's a really solid player. I think he's got some room to grow, could grow into a great player. If Kansas State added him, I would not be mad whatsoever. I just don't see him as a day one starter, and I think those are the guys you need to pursue first. Also, no one's saying K-State's pursuing. To caveat that, I'm not here to say that K-State has XYZ interest. I'm not saying that All Wright has interest in playing for Kansas State. It's just the fact that the kid's dad played here and there's some hometown ties. So I wanted to make a video discussing that. We'll see what happens, but guys, it's pretty much going to do it for today's video. I wanted to make this just because I know a lot of people have been talking about him on social media, on message boards, on this, on that. There's a lot of different topics to talk about. Everybody wants to know who the next guy is. Wanted to address the All Wright situation before I get into the future, what the next player looks like once we start to see this thing open up officially on Monday. But for now, that'll do it, and I'll talk to you guys here soon. Go Cats!